He stood alone in his kitchen, a bite of steak, then silence, and suddenly, no air. That moment is shorter than you think, and far more common after 60 than anyone likes to admit. If you've ever felt food go down the wrong way, or had that brief panic where your throat tightens and you cough harder than usual, you already know the edge of this experience. Most people brush it off. They drink water, they move on. But here's what many older adults quietly believe. If I ever choke badly, I'll just cough it out, or someone will be there to help. That belief is comforting. It's also dangerously incomplete, because choking that fully blocks your airway doesn't give you much time to figure it out. And when you're alone, there is no one stepping in, no one calling for help, no one performing the Heimlich for you. Now here's the part that changes everything. Your body does have a built-in way to save you, but only if you use it correctly, and only if you act fast. The first 20 seconds matter more than anything else that happens after. Think of your airway like a narrow kitchen sink pipe. When a soft blockage sits in the drain, water still trickles through. But when something seals it completely, pressure builds instantly. The system doesn't fail slowly. It stops all at once. That's what a severe airway obstruction does inside your throat. And the older we get, the more likely that perfect blockage becomes. Muscles weaken slightly, swallowing coordination changes, saliva production drops. A 2021 report from the American College of Gastroenterology noted that swallowing efficiency declines measurably after age 60, even in otherwise healthy adults. So this isn't rare. It's not dramatic. It's biological. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do, step by step, if choking happens when you're alone. Not theory, not general advice. Real actions you can take in those first critical seconds to save your own life. And more importantly, you'll understand why those actions work, so you don't hesitate when it matters most. We're going to walk through this in a way most people never hear. First, what actually happens inside your throat the moment choking becomes life-threatening, and why your instinct to cough sometimes isn't enough. Then, a method most people overlook entirely, even though it can create the same force as someone helping you. After that, we'll break down a belief that has quietly misled millions of older adults about choking, and why that belief can cost precious seconds. You'll also see how small, everyday habits change your risk far more than you think, and what you can adjust starting tomorrow morning. And before we finish, I'll give you a simple, repeatable sequence, something you can remember even under stress, so your body doesn't freeze when your mind goes blank. Stay with me, because the difference between panic and action often comes down to knowing one thing clearly at the right moment. Let's start with what choking really is, because most people misunderstand it. When food goes down the wrong way, you usually cough. Air is still moving. Your vocal cords are reacting. That's uncomfortable, but not immediately dangerous. True choking is different. Picture a piece of food lodged right at the entrance of your airway, not partially blocking it, completely sealing it. Air cannot move in or out. No oxygen is reaching your lungs. That's why one of the first signs isn't coughing. It's silence. You try to inhale. Nothing happens. Inside your body, oxygen levels begin dropping within seconds. Your brain senses this quickly. Panic rises. Your heart rate jumps. Muscles tighten, including the very ones you need to coordinate. A paper in the journal Resuscitation outlined that irreversible brain injury can begin in as little as 4 to 6 minutes without oxygen. But the critical decision window, that's much earlier. The first 20-30 seconds are when your actions matter most. Now here's where people get stuck. They assume coughing harder will fix it. But if the airway is fully blocked, coughing becomes ineffective. It's like trying to push air through a sealed bottle. So what actually works? Pressure. Specifically, a sudden increase in pressure inside your chest that forces air upward, powerfully enough to dislodge the object. That's what the Heimlich maneuver does when someone else performs it on you. It compresses your diaphragm, pushing air out of your lungs like a burst. But here's the key. Your body can generate that same pressure, even when you're alone. We'll get to exactly how in a moment. Before that, there's one mistake almost everyone makes in those first seconds, and correcting it changes everything that follows. Many people freeze, not because they don't care, but because the situation feels unfamiliar. I've had patients in their late 60s, something that surprises most people. Standing upright and panicking actually works against you. When you're upright and tense, your diaphragm, the muscle responsible for breathing, doesn't move as effectively. The pressure you need isn't generated. So what should you do instead? You use gravity and structure. One of the most effective methods when alone is to position yourself over a firm object, like the back of a chair or the edge of a countertop, and drive your upper abdomen sharply into it, right below your rib cage, not your chest, not your stomach. That impact mimics the force of an external Heimlich maneuver. Think of it as using your environment as the second set of hands you don't have. The action is quick, controlled, repeated if necessary. A guideline from the American Heart Association supports self-administered abdominal thrusts using a fixed object when alone. Now let's make this practical. Daily habit shift. Take a moment to notice your home layout. Identify one or two stable surfaces at waist height. Kitchen counter, sturdy chair, table edge. Not as something to fear, but something to know, because in a real moment, you won't have time to look around. You'll already know where to move. And here's the honest part. Every second spent hesitating reduces the chance of clearing that airway quickly. There's a belief that sounds reasonable on the surface. If I can't breathe, I'll just drink water or wait for it to pass. That instinct is deeply human. It's also one of the most dangerous responses in a full obstruction. Let's break it down. When the airway is blocked, swallowing becomes ineffective. Liquid doesn't push the food down. It can actually sit above the obstruction or worsen the blockage. The real issue isn't getting food down, it's getting air up. Here's the reality. Choking is a pressure problem, not a swallowing problem. And this is where most people get it wrong. Think of it like trying to unclog a tightly stuck cork in a bottle. Pouring more liquid into the bottle won't move the cork. You need force from below, something that creates upward pressure. Your lungs are that pressure source. When you sharply compress your diaphragm, you turn your lungs into a burst of air strong enough to dislodge the blockage. A large population analysis published in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine reviewed thousands of choking incidents and found that rapid mechanical intervention, thrust-based techniques, was significantly more effective than passive strategies like drinking or waiting. Now let's make this actionable. Daily habit number 2. Chew more deliberately than you think you need to, especially meats, bread, and fibrous foods. Take smaller bites. Put utensils down between bites. It sounds simple. It's powerful. Because prevention reduces the likelihood of facing that critical moment at all. And here's the reality to sit with. At 65, your body doesn't recover from oxygen deprivation as easily as it once did. That's not alarmism, it's physiology. For years, the standard advice focused almost entirely on helping someone else who is choking. But what happens when no one is there? That question has shifted how emergency guidance is taught. Before, choking response was external. You needed another person. Now we understand the body itself can generate the needed force. Let's zoom in. Your diaphragm sits just below your lungs. When it contracts upward suddenly, it compresses the lungs and forces air out rapidly. That air movement, if strong enough, can dislodge an obstruction. When you use a fixed surface to apply pressure to your upper abdomen, you're triggering that exact mechanism. But placement matters. Too high, on the ribs, and you risk injury without effectiveness. Too low, and the force doesn't transfer correctly. The correct zone is just above the navel and below the rib cage. Now here's a practical protocol. If choking occurs and you cannot breathe, speak, or cough, move immediately to a firm surface. Position your abdomen against it. Drive inward and upward sharply. Repeat in quick succession. This isn't gentle, it's purposeful. Some people also use their own fist pressed into that same area, pulling inward and upward rapidly. One tool worth knowing about is anti-choking devices designed for home use. They create suction to pull the obstruction outward. While not a replacement for immediate action, they can be useful if nearby. The key idea is this. Your body is not helpless in that moment. It has a mechanism. You just need to activate it. Let me ask you something. If this happened right now, where would you go? Most people have never thought about that. And that's where preparation quietly becomes survival. Remember the kitchen scene at the beginning? What mattered wasn't strength. It wasn't fitness. It was knowing what to do without thinking. Here's an angle people often miss. Fatigue and distraction increase choking risk. Eating while tired, talking while chewing, watching television and not fully paying attention to the act of swallowing. These small moments add up. There's also a subtle physiological shift after 60. Swallow reflex timing slows slightly, not enough to notice day to day, but enough to matter in certain conditions. A study from the National Institute on Aging highlighted that delayed swallow initiation increases the chance of aspiration and obstruction, especially with dry or dense foods. So here's the takeaway for this section. Choking isn't just a random accident. It's often a chain of small, preventable factors. Slow down when you eat. Sit upright. Finish one bite before the next. And if something does go wrong, act immediately. Everything we've covered leads to one final question. What exactly should you do, step by step, when those first seconds begin? Let's make this clear, simple, and usable. Because in that moment, simplicity wins. The first shift is recognition. If you cannot breathe, speak, or cough effectively, assume a full obstruction. Don't wait to see if it passes. The second shift is position. Move quickly to the nearest firm object at waist height. A countertop is ideal. A sturdy chair works too. The third shift is action. Place your upper abdomen just below the rib cage against that surface. Then drive your body inward and upward sharply. Think of it as a quick thrust, not a slow push. Repeat this motion several times in rapid succession. If that doesn't work immediately, switch to using your own fist. Place it in the same location and pull inward and upward forcefully. The fourth shift is persistence. Don't stop after one attempt. The goal is to create enough pressure to expel the object. That may take multiple thrusts. Now connect this back to what we discussed earlier. This works because you're compressing the diaphragm and forcing air upward. Exactly what clears the airway. And here's something most people overlook. Practice the movement without force when you're safe and calm, just enough to know the position. That familiarity reduces hesitation later. Before we close, there's one more detail that ties everything together, and it goes back to those first 20 seconds. At the beginning, I told you about a man standing alone in his kitchen, suddenly unable to breathe. What determines what happens next isn't luck. It's recognition, it's action, and it's timing. You now understand that choking is a pressure problem, not a swallowing problem. That your body can generate the force needed to clear the airway, and that the environment around you can become the tool that saves your life. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. Small habits, chewing slower, staying present while eating, reduce the risk, but knowing what to do if it happens gives you something even more valuable. Control. Because when your mind wants to panic, a clear plan takes over. If this changed the way you think about something as simple as eating alone, share it with someone you care about. These are the kinds of conversations that quietly protect people. And next, we're going to look at something just as unexpected. What happens inside your body during sleep that can affect your breathing in ways most people never consider.